Hello beautiful people, welcome back to the channel. Pots and Petals here, everything garden and allotment related. We've got a stunning morning today. It's 8:30 and the sun is shining and it's slowly drying up all of that dew that we seem to get in August. Fingers crossed, if it dries up a little bit later we should be able to save some seed from some of the wildflowers. I'd also like to try and focus on the wild area up by the main path because that is looking really messy. That was a plan for yesterday but we ended up building the compost heap instead. So we'll see if we can tidy that up, and then there's plenty of beds to be getting on with as well. I'm sure we'll find some other jobs along the way, but it's going to be a bits and bobs day today. So let's jump in and see what we can do. This is the area I want to focus on today. It is near the main path, so a lot of people can see it, which is why I do like to try and keep this wild area a little bit more tidy and decorative. So in this big bed, we have got everything from dahlias, salvias, echinacea. Got some coreopsis, some pot marigolds, there's daylilies in there, and there's loads of things that are now starting to self-seed. So we can see some forget-me-nots are now starting to grow through, some cosmos which might not come to flower this year. We've got some wild foxgloves and green aconite. And at the back there we have got loads of nigella. I need to get in there and remove a lot of that because it did self-seed like crazy last year and it is a pretty flower, but I don't want as much. Then we've also got the sage, even more pot marigolds, and the lavender has well and truly gone over, so we'll give that a cut back. And then right at the back we've actually got a conference pear which has never given me any fruit. I think it's just been way too overcrowded in there year on year, which is why I really want to get in there and remove as much as possible. There's a couple of roses, but I think they may have died because it's just been too overcrowded in there. And then we have got the sedum right at the back, but that isn't getting any light because the catmint is just blocking it out, and same with all the lavender and all the nigella. So we're going to have to go really careful when we're digging around in here for all the things that have self-seeded. So like I say, the forget-me-nots, we've got pot marigolds and poached eggplants, and they will last into next year. The cosmos, if that doesn't flower this year, the frost will get them. And if you're not too sure what the little seedling is, just leave it and see what it grows into. There's no harm in doing that whatsoever. I'm going to get in there, remove some of the weeds, do a lot of deadheading, and also remove anything that's well and truly gone over, such as the nigella. Before we go digging around in there, I did just want to give you some examples of little seedlings that you would want to keep. So down here we have got, this is a pot marigold, this little guy here, the bright lime coloured green. He will go well into winter. Some of the sharp frosts might kill him off, but there's a good chance that they won't. So I'll keep him in for now, and then we can always move him around at a later date. And there's a few of them dotted around, and the fun of it is you don't know what colour it's going to be until next year. Whereas seedlings such as the poached eggplant, you know what they're going to look like, but they are all these little frilly ones down here. These little things. Now they self-seed like crazy, so I've got plants all over the place and they do get quite large, and I don't want as many of them as last year, so a lot of them will be coming up unfortunately this year. But you could pot them up, but I find just sowing the seeds in spring and you'll have plenty. If you can see through the weeds, some of the weeds, these at the back, these are forget-me-nots. So they will be flowering in spring and they really are truly hardy, so they'll be absolutely fine. So keep them where they are and they'll self-seed all over the place. I've got a mixture of white, pink and blue, but last year I did have a few that cross-pollinated and got some really funky colours. So if you have a look on some of my shorts, I'll show you some of those that turned into a bit of a Frankenstein forget-me-not. If I look really carefully, they are actually everywhere. So these little guys down here, these tiny ones, these are forget-me-nots. But I'll keep as many in as possible just for over winter, and then come spring we can decide what we want to keep. And this little guy just in here, so the soft velvety leaves, these are foxgloves, so I'll definitely be keeping those in, and they can actually get to quite substantial plants if you do leave them in over the winter time. I find I get mixed up with foxglove seedlings and green aconite, but if you just let them grow you'll soon find out once they start to flower. And both are brilliant for the bees anyway. So I think I want to start by cutting down the lavender spikes because they're well and truly gone over, and then we can start removing that nigella and saving some of the seeds. Once I've cut them back, I'll show you how to save them. It's pretty simple. The best time to prune your lavender is after it's flowered, so late summer, as soon as the flowers start to go over. We're going to cut back these stems right down to the bush of the plant, and then we're going to give the actual bush a trim itself, about 1 inch off. Lavender is prone to go very woody, so it is a good idea to keep on top of the pruning every year. When you're cutting back into the plant, you can go back as hard as you want, just don't cut below where you can see the fresh growth starting to grow from the woody stem. If you cut below that, it might not reshoot. So just keep that in mind when you're giving your lavenders a real good prune. We'll use this bit of lavender to give you an example of where you want to be making the cuttings on your lavender. So you can see the new growth at this point and at this point as well. However, as you move down the stem, it's very woody and you can't see any new growth. So the only place that you'd be able to cut this stem would be at this point here, because you know that new growth is going to form from these points. However, as you move down, the likeliness of your plant producing new growth from these woodier bits is a lot less likely. So just to make sure, always make sure that you're cutting above any of these new fresh bits of growth. So I always start off with the shears just to hack it back, and then you can go in with a pair of secateurs just to trim it up a little bit neater. We're giving the lavender a really good hack back. I just want to get in there and weed, and then I'll give it its final prune. But before I do that, I want to get as much of this nigella out as possible so that we can save some of the seeds and perhaps just have a few next year and not an absolute jungle. I do feel quite bad pulling all of these up, because over winter this does provide quite a lot of habitat for a lot of the wildlife. However, I've just got so many of them and I need to get rid. Also, I've got plenty of other places for the wildlife to chill out and hibernate over winter. Plus, we're going to save these seeds, and I might even do a bit of guerrilla gardening with them. There's a few areas around near me which I think if I just threw these over the soil, it'd make it look so much prettier in the springtime. We're just going to take one of these little lanterns. You can keep them on the plant. I'm just going to make this a little bit closer, and then you just literally tip them into your hand and give them a bit of a squeeze, and you should get a few tiny little black seeds come out. Now, some will have crazy amounts in, some might have already started to set seed all over the place. So all we're going to do is we're going to take these tiny little seeds and put them either into a brown paper bag or a little envelope. Whatever you do, do not put them into a plastic bag, and don't forget to label it up and put the year that you've put them in. Don't use a plastic bag because they could get too humid in there and start to germinate, and then they're no good for you whatsoever. That did take a little while. If I had a big paper bag, I would just stick them all in there and give them a really good shake, but I didn't have anything. So I've poured it all into this little cup, because all we're going to do next is just blow in here, and all of this papery material should start to come out and leave the seeds behind as they weigh a little bit more. You could toss it up in the air if you had like a little frisbee or a little dish, and the air would take all the chaff away and leave you with the seeds. The bigger the seeds, the easier this is. So if you have a really fine seed like a foxglove, this wouldn't work at all. So just a simple process of blowing into that cup, and we've managed to get rid of most of that chaff. Those little bits in there, they should be absolutely fine. They'll dry off quite quickly along with the seeds. And I reckon we've easily got, what, 100, 150 seeds in there? I'm not going to count them all. So I'll pop these back into the envelope, and they should be good for storage now. You might remember my DIY planter in the barbecue. So I filled it up with some alpines and some house leeks. I think in America you call them chicks and hens. But one of them has started to flower. So they are known to do this when they get a little bit stressed out. But I cannot wait, because they do look really exotic and a bit prehistoric as well. The only problem is once they flower they do die off, but as you can see this has given plenty of pups for me. The sun keeps popping in and out. I want it out to try and dry these seeds off a little bit more because it is still a little bit damp. So whilst we wait for that, we're going to give this bed a real good clear up. I'm going to be cutting back a lot of that catmint because it has overgrown, and in the autumn I do need to split it. The sedum, that's growing quite big as well. I know they're not a big fan of being transplanted, but I am going to give that a go. But I think it's going to be a let's get in there and see what we find. I've accidentally dug these bulbs out, but they were right under the tree and there's a lot of vegetation, so they're never going to be seen. So I'm going to stick them down by the path, so hopefully we'll see what these are next year. That is looking a lot better. I can actually see what plants I've got in here now. You can actually see the pear tree. I want to keep below there as free as possible from any annuals, weeds or flowers. And I have also got 2 roses. I accidentally pulled one up, so I quickly chucked that in a bucket of water, and I'll need to think about planting that somewhere soon. The Nepeta has started to get a little bit too big, so we're going to divide that in the autumn, but I've left all the flowering buds on there because the bees do love that. The sedum have got plenty of light now, so it shouldn't be too long before they start popping into that beautiful pink. But because that area was so overgrown, a lot of the roses don't look too good at all, so I am going to have to give them a real good prune in the winter. And some of that lavender down at the bottom is looking rather dead because it was smothered by all of that catmint and all that nigella, and then the grass along that side was getting quite long as well. I'm hoping that the lavender will bounce back. If not, I'll just need to think about planting something else down this side. I definitely want to plant this up a little bit better next year with some more perennials and a more of a cottage garden feel. So now we've cleared all of this up, let's save some seeds. So the calendula are lovely and dry now. We've still got loads of blooms in there, popping that beautiful orange and the yellows, but there's plenty of dried seed heads. So we're just going to go in, nip the tops off and take them back to the table. We've got all 4 different stages there. So in the top right hand corner, that is dry, ready to come home. The one underneath it, that's in full bloom, so we definitely don't want that. That's for the bees. The one to the left, in the bottom left hand corner, that's how it will start to turn as the seeds are starting to develop, but that definitely isn't ready yet. And then when the one in the top left hand corner, that's still green, but you can see all of those seeds starting to produce. We've got quite a lot of seeds in there. Now the problem is that these seeds are really light, so if I start blowing in there, the chaff and also the seeds are going to come out. So I'm just going to let that all dry off together, and then we can pop that in an envelope on its own, and that'll be absolutely fine until next year. The actual seeds are these funny little C-shaped or U-shaped, depending on how you're looking at them, and they're ever so spiky on the outside, but they are the seeds that you're looking for, and they're going to turn into your lovely calendulas or pot marigolds. They might look a little bit wilted, but look how beautiful they are. It's a common mallow, which is a weed, but I think they're stunning, and I think they're quite tall plants. So in the wild areas, they go quite well, and they bring a little bit of colour. So I want to make sure we definitely have some next year. So I want to try and save some of the seeds. Now this is all guesswork, because I've never seen anyone save seeds from a weed before. So I'm just going to take the hard seed looking things from where the flowers were and hope that they're the seeds. So I've only saved a few. It's not like I want to grow absolutely hundreds of these, and I just want to see whether I can get them to germinate. I mean, they're a weed, so they should be pretty easy, but I just want to incorporate them into the wild garden next year. This is the rose campion, and these are definitely ready to start taking the seeds from. So all you do with these is tip them straight into the container. They don't need anything more than that. Might have picked up a couple of cleaver seeds, but the majority of that is red campion. Just look at all those seeds that just a couple of plants have given. They're prolific self-seeders. So we'll get these in a paper bag. We'll get a few seeds from this tall guy before all the birds get him. I will leave the majority in there for the birds. I mean, you could collect them all now and give them to the birds throughout the winter time, but I can see that birds have already been having a go on this. So I just want to save a few seeds for me, but they can have the rest. So I find the easiest way is just by giving it a bit of a scratch with your fingernails, and hopefully those seeds will just start to fall out in the palm of your hand. You should end up with something that looks a little bit like that. I mean, those seeds are really plump and full of oil, so they will need to dry out for a little bit before we start even thinking about planting them, but that'll be a next year's job anyway. And then all the yellowy green bits, they're just the spent flowers. So if you look really carefully at a sunflower head, you'll notice in the middle that there's individual flowers, and a bee has to pollinate each and individual one of those flowers to create all of these seeds. So you might find that your sunflowers are starting to go over, but if you give them a rub, you will see that underneath they are starting to create loads and loads of tiny diddly little seeds. Now these won't be ready yet, they do need to fatten up with all those oils, but give it a month or so and we can start saving the seeds from loads of our sunflowers. I've managed to save some sunflowers, calendula, nigella, mallow and red campion today, but you could be saving some poppy seeds, you could save some foxgloves, anything that would be setting seed right now you could go and collect. And you can either sow these now, ready to bulk up in the autumn, or you can wait until the springtime. This side isn't looking too messy, so I'm going to wait until next weekend to finish this off. There's a lot of seedlings in there that I want to take care of, whereas the other end I did want to just get everything out. This will be a job for next weekend to give this a final clear out. The sage is getting a little bit too big for that corner, so we're going to give it a good chop. Now we're going to treat this the same way as we did the lavender, so you don't want to cut too far into the woody bits. You want to make sure that you've got plenty of growth underneath for next year. Might look a little bit dramatic, but honestly I could have probably gone in a little bit further, but that should be fine for now. We've got plenty of sage leaves, too many to take home to be fair, so we'll have to put some onto the compost heap. Next year that should all sprout into new growth and give us loads more new sage leaves, and it'll just stop it getting all twiggy and woody. The other day when we done our cuttings video, I wanted to take some rosemary home with me, but I accidentally spilt the root hormone powder everywhere, so I didn't really fancy taking it home. So I'm going to give this a little bit of a trim up anyway, and then we can take those home for some nice roasties. With any Mediterranean herbs, I'd give them a trim down now, just so that they've got time to heal up before the winter comes and we get those sharp frosts. Guess whilst we're here, we might as well do the thyme as well. If only you guys could smell this right now, it's absolutely gorgeous. So my patty pans are really healthy and they're growing great. The only problem is that they're all male flowers. I haven't got a single female fruit flower on there. Can somebody tell me what I'm doing wrong, because this is my first year growing patty pans and I don't seem to be very successful. Okay, so I've literally had to stick my head into the plant right now, but I can see the tiniest little fruit. So I think we're okay, guys. Just that little thing there, I think is going to be a patty pan, so they might just take a little while. Fingers crossed. I keep meaning to give this bed some of my attention, but there's so much going on in there at the moment, I really do just keep putting it off. But one job I do want to get in there to do before we go home is just remove some of those yellowing leaves, especially the ones that are going a bit mildewy. It is pretty normal at this time of year for this to happen, but also you want the sunlight to be getting to your squash and your pumpkins, as it's the sunlight which is going to cure them and ripen them. So just get in there and remove any of the leaves which are covering them up to make sure that sunlight can get in there. I wouldn't worry too much with your bush type squash such as the acorn or the mashed potato squash, but definitely your trailing varieties. So we've got two Uchiki curries over here, and this is a Maria di Chogia, which is the green coloured one, if you can just about see that. We've got a few more Uchiki curry, and we've got some butternut squash, but they are still quite small, and a few more Maria di Chogia as well. And we can't forget the roast potato squash either. foxgloves, they seem to have come up absolutely fine, so we'll get a few of those planted out hopefully in spring. But the primroses, on the other hand, we've got nothing but a couple of weeds that I have managed to pull out, so I don't think we're going to get any primroses, but at least we've got the foxgloves. That's all we've got time for today, folks. We've managed to clear another area of the plot. It's looking a lot neater and tidier down there now. And we've also been able to save quite a few wildflower seeds as well, along with getting a few little odd bits and bobs done. So overall, it's been quite a productive weekend. I'm going to try and get down here during the week just to try and clear up some of those beds and get a head start for the weekend. I hope you've all had a lovely weekend wherever you are in the world, and I hope your next week is even better. I'll see you all again very soon, but in the meantime, take care guys, and I'll see you soon. See you later. Bye bye.